Hello, lovelies. Come on in. We are starting the course, Waging War from Your Knees. This is a course on how to build a lifestyle of prayer, how to claim your spiritual authority and the legacy that God has given you. It'll be about 9 sessions, and it's based on the book Waging War from Your Knees, which you can get on Amazon. I'll leave a link below. And the prayer journal. This has a different cover, and I bound it, but there is a prayer journal that goes with it. I'll leave those links there. But I want to assure you, you do not need to purchase anything to do this course. I'm going to leave links below for the pages I'm going to talk about in the video. So for instance, what you'll find in the links below is a link to a prayer journal. This will have most of the sheets in it that we're going to cover. And you can print them off, stick them in a binder. Now, this is about 47 pages. It's not insignificant, but you can pick and choose what you would like out of there. You also could just use white paper and write on it as well. In the video that we're going to see next, you'll also, I'll be talking about this handout, the definition of prayer and the definition of co-laboring. I put a link below to that as well. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to access those links and figure out what we're talking about as we go. I'm going to cut now to a short section of the course that was recorded live in our classroom with our small group. So we'll get the first part of this lesson today from there, and then I'm going to cut back to me and we're going to do the exercises for the course today. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. My goal, really, because I'm just honored that you guys are letting me talk, really, because you guys have inspired me in prayer, and I know we've grown as a group in prayer, so I'm hoping over the course of the 9 weeks I can bring you something new. But really my goal is for you to walk away with something tangible. Like, this is going to be your battle plan. And we're going to talk about who the battle plan is for and those things. But my goal is to get you something physical that you will take with you. And I'll talk about why that's important as we go too. I'll be hoping to answer any questions or doubts you have about prayer. We're gonna be leaning heavy into this and helping you create a consistent prayer, because my goal is not that this is an activity, but this is a lifestyle, that we have a lifestyle of prayer, that this just exudes from us. And so that's what our goal will be as we go. Okay. So, like I said, the course is based on this book, and this book isn't created based on a study of prayer, though I've done that. I've studied prayer, but this book wasn't written based on study of prayer, and it's not the story of my life, though my life is in it, but this is a testimony to what God can do in the darkest places, is really what it is. And it's the journey that God took me on to realize that prayer is not the end. Like, I hear so often, we say it so often, right? Oh, we've tried everything. We'll have to pray, right? When really what God was teaching me was prayer was the first. This is the most powerful weapon that we have at our disposal. And so that's the journey that I took to sort of coming to write this book, was it just became, wow, there's a message out there. And I've been so blessed. I've talked with women all over the world, and I've just been given this opportunity to teach them how to wage war from their knees, how to bring their families and their communities and their churches under a covering of prayer. And so I am super honored that you gave me a chance to do this, because what God has done with this book is way beyond me. And so I'm hoping that I can guide you on a journey that can get you to this place where you understand and can lean into this lifestyle of prayer. About 10 years ago, someone spoke a prophecy over my life that kind of became my life's mission, and I want to use it to inspire us today. And the prophecy went like this. It was that my ceiling would be my children's floor.
Yeah.
And that everything that I reach for in the spirit world, everything that healing that I do, generational curses that I defeat, chains that I break, that God will allow my children to start from there.
Mm.
And I was talking to a lady just yesterday, praying with her, and just like horrific things going on in her life, and very much feeling like, I don't even know why I'm here. This isn't working. I can't save my family. This thing is falling apart. And so I told her about this prophecy, and I said, I want you to begin to imagine yourself as a matriarch of a new nation. Like, God is calling you like Abraham did to a new place you've never seen, you don't know where to go, and create a family you don't know how to create based on values and beliefs and powers that you have no idea how to do. And so I want you to go out with this thought that you are now the matriarch of a new nation. And yeah, it's different from what you know. And I know so many of us have this, we are trying to build families and communities out of something we don't know. We didn't have love, we didn't have that acceptance, we didn't have those things. And so we're trying to build something we don't know how to build. And this is the sort of the message of Abraham's life, is God's going to send us into these places. And just like with Abraham, his kids struggled. They got it wrong. They tripped up, they fell over, they look at Jacob, like talk about someone who spent his entire life getting it wrong. Mm. Like he spent his whole life trying to obtain God's blessings through his own work. Lied, cheated, stole, all these things to try and get what he thought he deserved. But when we look at the very, very genesis of Jacob's story, Rebecca receives a prophecy saying that Jacob will be the one who leads. God knew before Jacob was born that he would be the father of 12 nations. He knew it. And this is kind of where I want to take us, is I want you to begin to think of yourself as a matriarch or patriarch of a new nation. That under you, God is placing spiritual legacy, spiritual authority over people in your life. And when you write a book, you got to decide who you're writing to. This is to moms. But the message doesn't have anything to do with whether you have children. Because in each of our lives, God has given us this mantle to be spiritual mothers and fathers to other people. In fact, over the course of my children's lifetime, there have been times I wasn't their spiritual mother. I was their physical mother. I was not their spiritual mother. They had other people that came in and did those. Maybe we'll hear some of those stories as we go. But people have been placed in our lives to be, God has said, I want you to be the person who stands in the gap for this person. And I'm handing you the spiritual authority over this person that you would pray and stand in the gap for them. And so, although the book talks about being moms and praying for your kids, and the prayer journal is about praying for your kids, I want you, we're going to talk about this more next week, but I want you to begin to think of this in terms of who is God calling you to be a spiritual parent to. Maybe, like Mary Lou, you have many spiritual children.
Oh,
many spiritual children, right? We have, whether it's our kids or it's neighbors or our church, God has placed people in our lives to be spiritual parents to. And I want you to try and start thinking of yourself as being this matriarch or patriarch over this new nation, that you are going to go into areas you don't know how to do. And those people underneath you, they're going to be struggling with things you don't know how to help. But God is still calling you to take spiritual authority over those people and to begin to pray for them in the secret place. So that's the direction that I want us to go is to begin to think in terms of spiritual authority. So it doesn't matter if they're your kids or not. And we'll talk more about spiritual legacy next week. You'll be sick of that term by the time we get through the book, but we'll talk about more of that next week. So I want to give you an idea of a bit of my story so you understand where this dark place was that God pulled me out of, just to give you, and some of you know some of my story, some of you have read the books and you know a little bit. But I'm just going to give you a piece of it. So, I am a Christian woman. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a wife. I am an author. All these titles. And I'm very proud of all of these titles. But none of the titles actually tell you how hard I had to work to achieve them. And the enemy attacked every single one of those titles in the course of my life and tried to steal them away from me. And so this is my journey to steal them back and to claim them. In the year 2000, I ended up driving to Medicine Hat in the middle of the night with 3 very scared kids. And the thing that they don't put in the brochures for domestic violence is that once you leave, you can't protect them. Because for their whole life, I'd been the one who stood in the gap. I stood between him and them. I ushered them out of the rooms. I made sure his anger was pointed at me. I stood in the gap and I protected them. They didn't see all of it because I stood in the way. And as I was driving down that highway, we're safe, because I knew without a doubt that if I ever called the cops and if I ever left, there was no way I could safely walk back into that house. So calling the cops that night and walking out the door was a line. And if you've ever worked with women who have been in domestic violence, sometimes it's hard to understand. Why didn't you leave sooner? All those things. But we all have lines. We all said, if it gets this far, we'll leave. If it does this, we'll leave. You know, if he punched me in the face, I'll leave. If he makes me bleed, I'll leave. But these events would happen, they didn't quite fit the line. And so I couldn't really leave because that wasn't the line, and he didn't get close to the line. Or it didn't play out the way that I had imagined in my head. But the one line I never thought to draw was if he ever hurts my kids. But in the moment that he did, I knew that was it. There was no way of going back, and there was no way I was ever walking back in that home again. So I'm driving into Medicine Hat, 3 a.m, with 3 very scared kids, and went into the women's shelter the next day and listened to all the social workers and the lawyers. Here's how you keep them safe. We'll give you restraining orders and you'll have custody. But it was all a lie, because the one thing you cannot do after you leave is protect your kids. I could no longer stand in the gap. I could no longer be there to be the buffer between him and them. And I ended up in a summer of reaching so far down. I didn't think I'd ever be able to pick myself up. Here, my 3 babies were in agony and being abused over and over, and I could do nothing. Absolutely nothing. And one day, after a very terrible day of recognizing what was happening to them and witnessing it, I ended up on my knees and I'm like, God, I have to give this to you. I have to give it to you because I can't do this. I can't protect them. And even if I never see them again, I need you to come and take over. I need you to be their protector. And God started to work right away. Though I couldn't have put it into words, and I certainly couldn't see it in the physical, God began to reveal to me that how you fight a battle with an enemy you can't see, in a battlefield you can't even identify, is you do it on your knees. And my sins have cost my kids dearly. And I can 100% say that their health today, their strength today has nothing to do with the choices that I made. It has everything to do with the moments on my knees. And I know this isn't everybody's story, but I know in each one of your lives you hit a moment where it's like, God, I'm at the end of me. I can't fix this. I can't fight this disease. I can't fight this relationship. I can't pay my bills. You have gotten to the point where it was like, it's the end of me. I've done everything I can and it's not enough. And so I know you know how I felt in that moment. And that's the journey that began this crazy diving into prayer, was because I didn't have an option. It just wasn't there. But to have this make sense, we have to understand how prayer works. And so you can hand this out while I'm talking. I'm going to keep going because I'll forget what I'm saying. Every page of this Bible, every single page, this isn't, how do I say this? This isn't the story of God, this is the story of us. We learn about God from here, and on every page of the Bible we see Jesus, but this is really the story of God using us to fulfill his will. Every single story is God reaching down, using us to fulfill his will, which is the ridiculous mystery of prayer, right? Like, you show up at church on Sunday, raise your hands in worship, read your Bible, but prayer is mysterious. Prayer is like, I don't even know how that works. That doesn't even make sense how that works. And it doesn't, because we have a God who could 100% fulfill his will from beginning to end without ever using us. He's fully capable of doing this entire thing without us. And yet, his choice, in fact, his only option, he doesn't use anything else, so I'm going to use you. What my will is, from beginning to end, from Genesis to Revelation, I'm going to use you. You are it. And so this is the co-laboring factor of prayer. Our prayers are not words just floating up in this room or in our living room or in our bedroom. Prayer is God getting down on his knees, face to face with us, talking to us about what is breaking our hearts. And when we're done, he gets up and he directs the powers of heaven. I'm not saying, oh gee, God, I need a car, so he gets up and does a car. But when him and I agree together in something in the secret place, and I go, God, I'm crying out for my child, or like this woman yesterday, God, I'm crying out for Josie. Lord, she is in darkness. God doesn't want her in darkness. God doesn't want her lost. God doesn't want my kids lost. We are agreeing together in secret. God, let's get busy and do something about this. And he gets up and goes, okay, let's do it. And he begins to direct in the spirit what we can't do in the physical. So to put this into biblical terms, I've got the definition of co-laboring there. It's in Ephesians. Just in case you never picked up on it, Ephesians like my favorite book of the whole Bible. But so this is the definition of of co-laboring in Ephesians 3, verses 21 to 22. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask and imagine. This is us praying in our mind, dreaming and asking. This is our peace, right? We are engaging with God, communicating with God, according to his power that is at work within us. God has not separated his will from us. He's not separated his power from us. Whoever God has placed you as a spiritual parent over in like who you've been placed over, those people, God is not separated what's happening with them from you. He's calling you into spiritual authority over them. He's saying, let's do this. I'm going to provide the power. I'm going to provide the work. You ask and imagine it, and I'll make it work through you. This is the definition of co-laboring. And understanding why this is so important, we have to understand the battle. And that's Ephesians 6:12. You guys know this one. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, authorities, powers of the dark world, spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That summer, when I was drowning, the courts didn't care. And their dad loved them. Despite all his failings, he loved them. I was not battling in the physical. I was battling an enemy who wanted to tear my family apart and create as much devastation as possible. This is who I was battling. And until you understand who you're battling, where the battlefield is, and what power you've got, you are defenseless in this battle. But Ephesians 1:18-20, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparably great power for us who believe. That power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at the right hand in the heavenly realms. This is the power we're talking about. We're not talking about simple power. We are talking about the power that raised Christ from the dead. And he's saying, I'm giving it to you. And the really crazy thing about prayer is that he's willing to give it to us even when we screw it up. Even when we get it wrong, even when we don't pick it up and take it and do something, he's okay with that, which is really mind-boggling. Working with us is like doing laundry with a toddler, right? Like,
That's a good
you're constantly having to correct and get them back in line, and they're gonna get it wrong, and you're gonna have to redo it. Like, this is what it's like working with us, and yet God goes, let's do it again, and let's do it again, and we're gonna keep doing this because I want to work with you, and this is the heart of the Father. So our goal in this journey is that we're going to create a battle plan for the spiritual legacy that God has given you, whether that's your children or your neighbors or your church or, I talked to a lady in Cape Town last week. It doesn't matter. God's given us spiritual authority. And so we're going to build this battle plan to begin to take the authority that God's already given us. He's already said, I want you to do this. And he's laid these people on our hearts. We know them because I know, even just without asking you, all of you had someone in mind when I started talking about who your spiritual children are. God's already laid them on your heart. And so he said, here's their spiritual authority. I'm putting their life in your hands. And you're going to screw it up and you're going to get it wrong, but we're going to keep doing it till you get it right, because he refuses to do it alone. I can't answer that mystery. I have no idea why. The God of the universe decides he needs to use me to do anything. It seems ridiculous, but biblically, this is what he's saying. So we need to step into that authority. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Learning my story, learning what the definition of prayer we're going to be working with, what the definition of co-laboring is. All of those I think are going to be very helpful as we move forward. So I want to move into this, or the exercise part of the session. And to preface this, one of the most vital things that I learned to develop a strong prayer relationship with God was understanding where my prayers were heard. Because I had always, and maybe like you, always sort of assumed that, I sit myself in my living room and I say a prayer and the words kind of float up to heaven. But actually, the Bible gives us a really good picture of what happens with our prayers. So in the Old Testament, we've got the story of the Israelites. And God gives them laws. And those laws govern things like marriage, family, government, health, diet, everything. It's very encompassing. And the reason for that is that the Israelites have been in captivity for so long they have no identity. They wouldn't know how to plan anything because everything has been dictated for them. So God takes them out of that system, throws them in the middle of the desert, and here's these people who have no experience with how to organize themselves or how to live life. And so that's why those laws are so varied, and it seems to cover a lot of bases, is God's trying to create a culture. And the legal system or picture that God creates in the law, actually we use today. Our legal system, if you kind of read through the laws that God gives, the legal system is very similar. It was based on biblical law. And the premise is that when we have an issue, we go into a location, a building, and there is a judge there who will hear our petition. We present our case, and then he directs resources, makes judgment, helps us solve problems, whatever it is. And this is the model he gave to the Israelites, was that their really big issues went before Moses. But Moses had lieutenants and leaders below him that would handle less important. But the premise was that people would come into the building, present their issues, and then the judge would give a sentence of what would happen. And God did not just come out of the, create this out of thin air. All of the laws, actually, if we get really deep into the Old Testament, what we see is it is entirely... You hear me talk about this in all my courses. This is the story of Christ from beginning to end. And we just talked about co-laboring. God tells the story of Christ through his people because his entire plan is to co-labor with us to make it happen. But this story is about Jesus, and everything foreshadows the future of the coming king. And so this legal system that God set up with the Israelites is a foreshadow to the legal government system in heaven. And so the Bible tells us that God and Jesus are seated in the throne room, and Jesus intercedes for us. So there is a location where prayer happens. And this is called the throne room. And we see several glimpses of it throughout the Old Testament, Ezekiel and Daniel, but the best sort of overall picture of that is in Revelation 4, and John describes this throne room. Now, the importance of the throne room is this is a place where we go and we petition before the Lord. We give him the things that we're worried about, the things that we need, the problems we can't solve. And then we hear the Lord then directs the powers of heaven to make things happen. So this legal system is very much a fuller picture of the limited vision that God gave the Israelites. Now, if you remember from the book of Job, we also get a picture of this. At the very beginning of Job, we see the picture of Satan coming into the throne room to present his request before the Lord. We know this is a different place from heaven because Satan was cast out of heaven. So there is a separate place called the throne room where we go and we set our petitions, and Satan has to do that as well. He has to come before the Lord and present his petitions. Now today, I want us to really think about what is that throne room? What does it look like? And begin to visualize it, because having something to visualize when you're praying helps you stay focused on what you're praying. And so we're going to look at what does that throne room look like? And what does it tell us about the Lord and our petitions? Because the most powerful thing that I realized when I was going through Revelation 4 is that when I come into the throne room to present my child or this thing that is weighing on my heart, and I speak it to the Lord, I'm not just speaking to the Lord. There are 24 elders there. There are spiritual beings, angelic beings. The entire court system of heaven hears my petition. This gives more, I hope gives you more weight to your prayers. When you understand, when you pray, you're stepping into the throne room, speaking to the King before all of heaven, you're presenting your requests. And so today, one of the exercises that we're going to do is to look at this throne room. So if you have the prayer journal, I think it's on page 21. Page 21, 22 and 23. The page looks like this. If you have the free one, you'll have a page like this. I want you to take a few minutes and go through Revelation 4 and write down the visual, auditory, the specifics of this room. And I want you to pause the video and do that because I'm going to keep moving through the lesson. So just pause the video, read through Revelation 4, and begin to articulate in your mind, what are you seeing from Revelation 4? What are the images that are coming to your mind? And if you're an artist or if you're creative at all, you can draw a picture there. My son found out you can give this description to ChatGPT and it will create a visual image for you. And I don't want you to get tripped up on whether it's perfect or not. I want you to understand the metaphor of stepping into the throne room because this is a very real place where our petitions are heard. And I'm going to read... When we get into the prayer time, I'm going to read for you what I see when I do my prayers, just to give you an idea. So we'll be doing that as well. Okay, what else did I have to do? If you're doing this at home, I want you to take either your free prayer journal pages or your prayer journal from Amazon and begin to organize the pages. Become familiar with where things are in there because we'll be going back and forth into those items as we go. So as before we move into prayer time, I want to begin to expand your thoughts about what you can bring before the Lord. Sometimes we get into our prayer times and I apologize for notifications going off. We get into our prayer times and what do I pray about today? And I struggle with that too. That is something I struggle with all the time. Sit down, oh gosh, what do I pray today? And I cover my top 10, right? The kids, the house, the finances. And then I'm like, I don't know what else to pray. So if you look in your free pages or in the prayer journal, in the prayer journal, I believe it's like page 27. This is it should look something like this. I think in the free one, these might be blank, but anyway, you get the idea. This is a sheet you're looking for. Begin to fill out prayer requests within each of those categories. And in the prayer journal, it also gives you a blank one of those so you can put your own categories and just begin to think about what are the areas of my life that I could be bringing before God that he could be helping me with. And this helps us just write down all our ideas. And when we go to prayer, we can pull this out and then like, oh, I need to pray for this. I want to pray for this. God, I'm seeking this, or my goal is this. And when I did this, some of these took up way more room, right? So I moved them around and stuff so that I had lots of room because I had many requests in them. And I thought, these are all the desires of my heart and I'm not bringing them before the Lord. So I want you to take time to fill this out as well. As we go into prayer time, we're going to be using this. So pause the video if you need to. Spend a couple minutes on that prayer focus, and we're going to move into prayer time and finish this session. Okay, so I want you to keep your prayer focus near you because we're going to move into a bit of a prayer time, and I'm going to read for you what I visualize when I'm going into the throne room. I want you to close your eyes and visualize what I'm saying. You've looked at Revelations 4. This is just going to be my spin on it. Begin to visualize walking into the throne room. And then at the end of it, I'm going to leave some room for your prayer. And that's when you're going to be talking to the Lord about these things. You can do one at a time. You can do them all, whatever you have time for. And stay in that sort of thought process of, this is where I am, that I'm speaking before the King, and all of heaven is hearing this. So what I often tell moms is, I want you to realize every time you bring the name of your child before the King, and we talked about spiritual children today, so if you don't have children, I want you to translate, who is my spiritual child right now? When we say their name echoes through the halls of heaven. Like, it is spoken before all of the activity of heaven. This is a very powerful legal moment when you come before the Lord with these requests, because you are stating your case. You are then asking the Lord to agree. And we talked in the video about understanding that when God agrees with us, he begins to move in those areas. So we're going to move into some tangible prayer time. I'm just going to read to you from, and if you have the book, this is, sorry, I'm in the wrong space. Question number 2, where do my prayers go? Just to give you a bit of an idea, I'll just read briefly from it. The throne room is where the Holy Spirit hears my prayers, translates them to the Father, and then Jesus prays to God to answer that prayer. When I mention my child's name, or my spiritual child's name, it vibrates through the halls of heaven. The elders hear, the angels hear, the spiritual beings hear, and the Trinity responds. This is where God makes the decision to act on my prayers. If Satan wants to test me, he must first come before God in the throne room. My status as a child of God grants me access to the throne room. I do not enter as a tentative slave begging for an audience. I enter as a child of God. This is my rightful place. And as a child of the King, I have authority here. Prayer is the vehicle I use to bring the realities, powers, and decisions from the throne room to earth. Very powerful place we're going to enter into. So I want you to take a moment. I want you to close your eyes and begin to visualize this description I'm going to give you. And as you're visualizing it, I want you to begin to see yourself entering this throne room and petitioning the King for what you need, the prayer focuses that we talked about. Okay. I enter a large hall. The walls rise above me beyond what I can see. They are glass with a green sheen to them. Lights dance off the walls, casting a balance of light and shadow. I am walking on pure glass, crystal-like, smooth and cool but not cold. I enter as a toddler entering my parents' room at night. I am unadorned and barefoot. The room I enter is full of noise and movement, but I am unafraid. Across from me, I see large thrones with majestic elders perched. They are engrossed in the surrounding activity, and each is eager and animated. They have heard and seen all this before, and yet they are still enamored with the scene before them. I cross this crystal sea of glass, aware of the spectacle before me. All my senses are engaged as magnificent sounds and lights explode in the skies above me. But my attention is fixed. Across the room is a large throne. It stands higher than I can estimate. It is emerald and filled with a dizzying array of precious stones. Around it, angels fly, sing, and dive, but they are not my focus. On the throne sits the one I love, the one I am here for. His majesty is beyond what I can comprehend and immense in scope. As I draw near, I feel his attention. With each step, he becomes smaller and comes into greater focus. What was beyond all I could comprehend now shrinks to the size of a man. This man sees me and runs to me. His arms are outstretched. He wears a smile I am both familiar with and can never see enough. Despite the activity of heaven going on around us, he sees only me. The distance erases between us, and I fall into his arms. They are strong, warm, and familiar. He is whispering in my ear, but all I hear is his love. We fall to the ground, and I rest my head on his knees. This is where I tell him everything. Tears fall, laughter flows easily between us, and I give it all to him. He rests his hand on my head and runs his fingers through my hair as I unload everything. He never interrupts, is too busy, or is bored by my ramblings. Around me, the sights and sounds of the universe thunder, yet all I hear is his voice. I know he is dealing with greater problems than mine, people starving, the church in decline, war, and yet I know he would stay here forever with me, just listening to me about my day. Here I am not a servant, not a sinner, not a burden. Here I am a daughter. As you're visualizing this place, I want you to look at your prayer focus and bring some things before the King that have been laying on your heart. Thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you for this lesson. Thank you for the throne room, this place where I get to go to bring everything to the Creator. God, you are so worthy of my attention and my time in this place. Give me wisdom as I go forward and learn how to go deeper into prayer and create a lifestyle of prayer where you and I are in communion constantly throughout the day. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. I hope this was a blessing to you. God bless.